Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave. I'm joined here, as always, with my co host, Greg. Greg, what's up, man? How you
Nothing much, Dave.
doing?
Oh, fantastic.
What's up?
Fantastic. A little bit of a tough week, but pushing through, as always.
Oh, Greg, tell us all about it.
Yeah. It's
Tell
funny,
us
a little
about the
behind the
week.
scenes. I just came on and said, "Man, I've had a tough week." And Dave was like, "Let's save that." And I was like, "All right, sir." But I just saw you across from me and almost fell right into like therapy session. Like,
Yeah.
care for me.
And I felt not like a therapy session. And I
And you're
said,
like, "I'm off
nah,
the clock, pal.
no
Not now."
thanks.
I'm like, "All right. It's gonna cost you." That's what you really said.
I should have said that. You're right.
You were saying,
This is
Like,
this is going to be released on St. Patrick's Day.
Friggle
And
D.
we are not doing a St. Patrick's Day episode. Quite literally the opposite of a St. Patrick's Day episode in some ways. Like totally different countries we were
Yeah,
talking
I don't know if I would say the opposite or it's arch nemesis or anything like that.
about. No, nothing like
Just
that.
just
Just
different. We're not gonna be talking about shillelaghs and shamrocks and shenanigans like we have in the past.
I
Although I
yeah.
did go to an Irish pub today.
Oh yeah.
It is
Sounds like you're really having a rough week, Greg.
it is St. Patrick's Day weekend, and I did. I listened to the Wild Rover song. That's always a good one.
But they were playing all Irish music.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a sucker for a bagpipe too, I'll tell you
Oh, I
that.
love Irish music actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty great. Um, anyways, we are.
So so we have been getting away from the holiday themed episodes and there's I don't know what our audience feels about that and I would love to hear people actually maybe let us know. Should we try to, theme episodes around holidays that are, they're falling around, or should we just kind of move on from doing that? Because that's historically been always what we've done.
Yeah. Did I do that Jonathan Swift short book last time? Uh
Yeah.
that was heavy. That was heavy. Maybe
We probably had some other topics we could have covered.
yeah. We did do leprechauns if you're interested. I mean, there's stuff there
We
if
did the potato
famine
famine.
too.
I loved that.
Which one?
The potato famine one.
Yeah, that one was a great one,
It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why are you hungry? You get all these potatoes. See, that's the common misconception. That's not what happened.
that
So
is not what happened.
go back and check it out. Um, anyways,
I
Dave,
got to give a few shout outs
give a
to our
shout out. Yeah.
new Patreon members. So starting with, I think the last one that we didn't shout out yet would be Alley Cat. So thanks for joining, Alley Cat. Rachella Liss, I think is how you say it. I'm not totally positive the last name, but just joined our bonus episode tier and also commented to us that her and her boyfriend both listened together and they both said hi. So wanted to give them a big shout out and a thank you. And they're coming from Belgium, which is awesome.
I thought that was cool
So
too.
that is so cool. And then I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It looks like Bailey has also joined recently. So, and then asked for an episode on what was it, mushrooms and microdosing, which I know you responded back that we actually did that one last year, or maybe it's even been more. I don't even know. So definitely make sure you check that out, Bailey.
And yeah, I did mention that we did that also. The episode on ketamine, heavily researched episode, if I do say so myself. So those are great to check out.
Did we do ketamine?
We
Yeah.
did do
I was
ketamine.
like trying to remember what other, because I know we did a couple like that mushrooms and another like
Yeah, we
narcotic
were
that,
on a kick.
well, we still got to cover, I think we should cover marijuana use.
Marijuana is a great one to cover.
It's controversial
Controversial. Yeah. You're out
because
there with it's just smoking it up, and I'm thinking, hey, slow down.
yeah, you know, yeah, I think there's a lot for us to cover with that. And it gets talked a lot by people in our profession, which I don't know if everyone knows, because I know everyone's got such a lackadaisical approach to it and attitude about it in today's society. But there are some serious mental health concerns
Sure.
that people in our field still share despite the legality of it.
Well, I think like, and we don't have to get into it, but it really is the weed that's being smoked now is different than the weed that was being smoked. Like, not to sound like boomers, but the weed that was being smoked when we were young is different. It just is. It's much more powerful now and potent. The levels of THC are like, I mean, exponentially higher. So it's
Yeah,
really become this sort of dangerous thing that's unlocking a lot of dormant psychosis for a lot of people. But that's something we could talk about at a different time.
sure. And MDMA is another
Did we
one
do
that we have.
MDMA?
We didn't. It's still on the list. So I just noticed
Oh,
that
we
today.
did MDMA together. We didn't do an episode.
And let's see what else. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Is MDMA Molly? Oh my God.
I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe.
Molly's like some, I don't know.
Ecstasy.
I almost tried it.
Everyone was doing it when I was young. People were doing it at the prom.
I went to a music festival and me and my friend said no 1,000 times. And like the last day of it, we're like, we should probably just do it. Everyone here is like
Everyone's
throwing it
doing it.
out there, throwing it around. We should probably just try it. And then when we finally decided that we were going to try it, nobody had it anymore.
Dude, you're a dare kid. What are you talking about, man? Just say no. That was like, that's
I
our
feel like
generation.
that was like meant to be that I wasn't to do it. You know what I mean?
Your brain on drugs. That was our generation. Like there would be commercials with a hand and just a myriad of different colored pills and rolled up joints and everything and be like, don't do drugs. It's like, that's all the drugs. Is that how people come at you with drugs? Just a hand open with all the drugs. I just remember that.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh, it's
whatever.
like a punch bowl nowadays.
Oh,
And
you
you
never know what's going on these days. You wake up and you're laying on a bath of ice when your kidney's gone. That's our urban legends
really,
episode.
really, Greg?
Careful, kids. All right. Wow. Off topic, huh, Dave?
Yeah.
Is it time to reel it back in and maybe?
Let's get to this.
Okay. So
This loaded topic that you decided to drop on
yeah,
us.
I love it when you are not sure if a topic's going to go over well, and then you say a topic that I decided, which is true, and often those are the ones that don't go well. But
I feel like this topic, and I'm going to be brutally honest right off the bat, this topic should have been split into two episodes.
yeah, maybe. You're probably right, but I think I can go through mine pretty quick. And yours was the one that really sparked my interest in this. And the
Okay.
one that I'm going to talk about, I just happened to be at Barnes and Nobles and saw it. And I was like, oh, this is like sort of a cool thing too. But I think there's cool things to talk about when it comes to this. We've been on sort of a grief kick lately. I don't know if it's come
Yeah.
up a few times in
Hmm.
the last couple of episodes. This isn't that, but at the same time, it's just a different way to look at death. So we're going to talk about a couple books of the dead. The first one is going to be the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now, this one's interesting to me because it has themes of like reincarnation, which, Dave, I don't know your take on reincarnation. You into it? You out of it or what?
I am undecided.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So this text is from the 8th century. It's a guide through the consciousness of the bardo, which the bardo is just this transition state between death and rebirth. Okay. So that's a difference there. So
Yeah.
it's such a comfort for you can imagine why these books and I don't know religions and philosophies and myth and legends are developed so that people have an answer to these like what happens when I die? Why am I here? Right? It's like it's comforting, I think. So this is something that's traditionally read aloud. But it's what's interesting, David. It's like it's read aloud to the dying or the recently deceased, and it's supposed to be like a manual to help the soul recognize the nature of its own mind and attain enlightenment and escape the cycle of suffering, which, in Buddhist tradition, to live is to suffer, right? And the important thing is to try to find and choose your own sort of suffering. Like for example, I've used the example of going to the gym is choosing to suffer. It gives you some autonomy, it gives you some agency and some power because you're going to suffer either way, right? And, relationships, do I stay in this relationship? Do I leave this relationship? Either way, you're going to suffer. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like choosing your own suffering that it aligns with your values. It's like the right kind of suffering. Anyways, um, this is reminding me a lot of the handbook for the recently deceased, Dave. I thought that would kind of,
Beetlejuice.
yeah.
I've heard that reference so many times lately, and I'm like, why does that keep coming up?
I don't know, but it's essentially that's exactly what it is. It's the handbook for the dead, and that's what
Yeah.
this is sort of a handbook for the dead too. And what this Tibetan Book of the Dead does is first takes you through the three stages of Bardo, which again is that transitional state. So the first Bardo occurs at the moment of death. So the deceased is urged to recognize and merged with clear light, which represents ultimate reality and the opportunity for immediate liberation. Now, Dave, this is kind of a through line between all religions, right? Clear light. And
Yeah,
also, when we did an episode on what was it, the was it near death experiences, or was it like child rebirth?
we did both of those.
Yeah, so there is always this element, there's this consistent sort of element of seeing a light. I don't know
I
what
think
that.
that was the near death experiences. We talked
Yeah,
about that.
right. So, I mean, I think that's kind of cool that that's a through line there. Um, and the second Bardo is a period where the soul encounters visions of peaceful and wrathful deities, which means, entities or beings. These are taught to be projections of the deceased's own mind, which I find fascinating. So, in the second Bardo, you're going to have to, as I interpret this, you're going to have to encounter peaceful and wrathful deities. So when you die, again, you're going to have to, you know, be faced by deities and they're representations of your own mind and I guess your own actions. So to me, the way I read that, it's like when you die, you're going to have to face entities. And if you live your life in a certain way, you'll be facing much more peaceful entities. And if you live your life in another way, you're going to be facing a hell of a lot of wrathful entities, which is probably less what you want to do. So it's like a sort of I don't know, like a something to look forward to, some a reason to live in a certain way. Like we have that in Christianity, we have that in Judaism, we have that in all religions. Like, behave in this way and you'll be rewarded for it. I guess that's where that's fitting in there. And the third state, the third bardo, is the state of becoming or rebirth. So if liberation was not achieved earlier, the soul is judged by the Lord of Death and eventually drawn towards a new womb on its karma. And its karma, if I remember correctly from like a wildly important book that I read a while ago, the Bhagavad Gita and other sort of like, maybe even the Tao of Pooh. I
Yeah.
think karma is just the way, right? It's like your path, your purpose, the thing that you're supposed to become, something like that. Okay. So my kind of goal for this was to figure out what are some good uses, for the living. Like what about this book? You're just reading it to a body. I mean, how much good is it doing that body? I don't know. But why is it good for the living? Um, one thing is overcoming fear or mortality.
Hmm.
So answers, right? The text suggests that confronting the reality of death can dissolve the subconscious fears that drive irrational behaviors in daily life. So it reminds me of this so all right. You know the concept, Dave, of like pushing back on, irrational, unwanted thoughts or even like traumas, like trying to keep that away all the time. And it kind of like keeps you in this like, state of hyper arousal. That's kind of basic stuff, right? What if you could, instead of trying to push it back, you turn around and search the subconscious for like those unwanted thoughts and those unwanted fears? And maybe that has less of like an anxious effect. I think that's like what it's trying to do for death, right?
Hmm.
Let's
Yeah.
look and explore death a little bit,
Right.
you know? And then the other part of that is like embracing impermanence. So a deep understanding that all life is transition. That's what I really like about this resurrection, not resurrection. Let's go dipping them into my own.
Reincarnation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it's transition, right? So it's you can use that in your daily life. Obviously, the only thing we can really count on is change. We could focus on and the fact that there is impermanence. That's going to be like a through line through this thing whole too. Um, the fact that things are always changing and aren't permanent, that says a lot for the things that stink in your life, right? This is temporary.
Yeah.
Also, the things that you love so much in your life, things you're great, like really focus on what matters and try to live more fully in the present. I think that's kind of good, right? Also,
Yeah.
preparing for the end, Dave. Like it provides a mental roadmap for the dying process, which helps the living prepare themselves and comfort others, changing death from this like fearful event into a conscious transition. It's almost like it takes the uncertainty and chaotic nature of a death and like gives you, all right, we have this roadmap, we have this thing to lean on. It gives you a little bit of a sense of control, I think. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
It also develops self-awareness, right? The teachings encourage cultivating deep meditation, self-understanding, and mindfulness. Again, this is like sort of a Buddhist thing. And of course, grief support. You know, spiritual perspective on loss, helping bereaved understand the journey of the departed. Plus, there's this inclusion piece of it too, where others are reading and just helping you process this whole thing. You know.
So, I mean, honestly, this benefit, like you said, this benefits probably the living more than the dying. And that whole idea of reincarnation also helps the living because, it's not even with our own death, but accepting and kind of finding some comfort in the person that's dying's death, and like that we may encounter them in some form at some point in time. I think that's comforting, that's hopeful, that has a really positive impact on people, I think.
Yeah, and Dave, it makes me think like this unknown, the fear of the unknown, also the fear of impermanence. I think that like sometimes when you say that word, like impermanent, things are impermanent and always changing. I think that in some ways that makes people feel uncomfortable. But I think what they're forgetting and what this book is reminding you is that permanence is the real fear.
Yeah.
And I think the reincarnation aspect of this suggests that like, hey, look, nothing's permanent, and that's good, right? Like it's much more comforting to think like if I die, I'll be reborn in another way. Like my soul, like my essence lives on. That's much more comforting than like when I die, that's it. I'm just just nothingness.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is all about that. It's about giving us some level of comfort in knowing that there's more to life than just the nothing that we, can anticipate might happen if we die.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, like I know it's a little bit of a personal thing, and we've gone here before, but like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I will not just accept that there's nothing when we die.
Right. Yeah,
There's
my
more
thoughts
to
are
life.
forever changing. That's why, like, when you asked about reincarnation, right now, I don't know. I mean, and I don't think you have to know. I don't think you have to have like a permanent thought about, or like a steady thought about it. I think your thoughts can change based on how beliefs and views change over time. But I do think that regardless, that there's something. I don't obviously have any idea what that something is.
Yeah, and this is kind of reminding me also of something that to keep it in the East, something that the Japanese do that we've talked about when we talked about the suicide forest, and that's seppuku, which is that ritual suicide. But more importantly than that act, I think like is this thing called jisai, and that's the death poem. So these poems are like this final reflection on life, nature, and acceptance. And they're typically, which must be a pain in the ass, you're about to die and you write a poem, but in a format, like not a haiku, but a tanka, which is a 5 7 5 7 7 syllable structure. So I thought these are super interesting because it's like in no part of your life are you more sure of what's important if you're genuinely faced with death. You know that it's coming. That's like when that's like so I'm watching this show what is it called? The Pit. It's like a doctor show. And there was this woman dying of cancer and like she's got her like family all around her and everything like that. And I'm like, "Oh my God, like of course she has her family around her. Of course she's like there's nothing more important in this last 24 hours of your life than like your family and the people that mean the most to you." So it's like why do we spend so much of our lives doing things that mean so little to us, like our jobs? No, I'm just not our like our
Hmm.
jobs are wildly important to us, right? But it's like, you know what I mean, dude? Like we spend so much time on things that don't really matter, so much stress on things that don't really matter. Like it just I like knowing that if we really break it down, like what's important in life, and these poems help us remember that. So there's a few of them that are like really interesting, and these things been going on for like centuries. So in 1180, this Minamoto no Uramasa wrote a poem that it's like there's a these are like just famous examples, and it's cited as the first to include a poem before seppuku. This was like the first time that this happened, and he compared his life to a fossil wood that never had the chance to bloom. That's like life cut off in, so it's like it reminds me to like hurry up and start blooming, right? Um, there's another one that from this guy Asano Naganori, and this is the poem that triggered the events of the 47 Ronin. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's like this
Hmm.
famous samurai story. Keanu Reeves movie is the only reason why I know it. But he quotes, "Sadder than blossoms, scattered by wind, a life cut short in prime of its spring." I mean, just writing this stuff that was written, 400 years ago.
Yeah.
I just think that there's just something about these that really kind of speak to me. And the common themes in these poems is, there's a lot of reference to cherry blossoms because they're so. So I have a cherry blossom tree in my yard, and in the spring they flower, and it's beautiful for about a week. And I guess like that sort of idea of its life really is so impermanent, it's so quick, it's so fleeting that we really have to start living. It's like the Stoics and memento mori thing. I just think it's so important to look at this stuff. So it's like people could think it's morbid for us to be having a conversation about death books, but what it really is, it's like this calm acceptance of death, viewing it not as an end, but a return to a source or transition to, I don't know, I guess in some ways the void. That's what some,
Mm.
philosophies would have you think, but um I don't know. There's something about it that reminds me of talking about death is helping us remember to live, I guess. Is that how I will end my little portion of this thing here?
Yeah. I got this rhododendron bush in front of my kitchen window, and it's the same concept as the cherry blossom. Like
Mm,
you wait for it to blossom. It looks freaking beautiful. It's like mine's purple, and it actually makes it blocks my kitchen window almost to the point where all the light that comes in the morning is purple on everything, and
yeah.
I just absolutely love that period of time that it's blossomed, but it's so short lived, and then it makes a huge mess when it and
Yeah.
it looked, and then it's bare, well, not bare, but it's obviously void of the flowers for a long period of time, but it's just so worth it for that, like however long it's in bloom. I would never get rid of it, and I would never do anything to like damage it because of that. And I just want it to grow wild and crazy because the bigger it is, the more beautiful it is for
Yep.
that couple of weeks that it's in bloom. And
And
it's
Dave,
interesting because like you look forward to it.
right, and the fleeting, and it's not as beautiful and it's not as special without the fleeting nature.
Right. That's what makes it special. And that's something
And
that
that's what
you
makes life
think
special,
about.
right?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I think that we need things in life that we can look forward to, even if they're temporary. And I think that's probably the problem with some people is their mindset is like that temporary nature of things bothers them
Mm,
because they know they want things that will never go away, but they don't realize that actually that temporary nature is what makes it so special.
absolutely. Can't
I
celebrate
think
Christmas
it's
every day.
yeah, and it's like that for everything. It's like that for emotions. It's like that for um life events. We can't just live in this fantasy world all the time. It that fantasy wouldn't be special anymore. It wouldn't be a fantasy.
Mm.
So it's we have to treat life like it's temporary, but also like accept and appreciate that it's temporary.
Treat life like a rhododendron.
Yeah.
Let it be
I
wild and
mean,
crazy and beautiful.
isn't that kind of like also the way we should look at the people in our lives too? Like they're gonna, be
Damn,
a
dude.
certain age for a very short period of time. Like your kids, you're gonna
I
have them
know.
as children for a short period.
Holy
Well,
shit. Like
it,
my kids and like I don't have any grandparents. I wish you would have told me this rhododendron story about about 10 years ago. But I mean,
yeah,
for real,
same.
these people are my parents. How about that?
Yeah.
It is fleeting. And when it's gone, it becomes nostalgia, and we hold the memory of those rhododendrons too, and that's what also makes it special. You
Mhm.
know, like we know it's coming, we know it's beautiful, and we've seen it and we've experienced it, and it didn't last forever, and that's why it's beautiful. Um,
It kind of drives me nuts. I mean, I think this was like a thought maybe when I was younger, but when I hear people talk about it now, and now that at an age where I kind of can understand these concepts better, when people get so mad at death, like just the idea of death, like why do things have to, like why, it's, well, it has to.
mhm,
It's just, it is what it is. It's the nature of the way the world works and the way that we all work. And, we can't, there's no point in being mad about it. It's like, instead of being mad about the idea of death, just appreciate it more when it's around.
mm.
So
Yeah, yeah, life. Appreciate life more when it's around.
yeah, not
Yeah,
death.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
had to say
life,
that out real quick. Yeah.
the relationships, the whatever.
You
It's
know,
just
and Dave, what another interesting thing, like to see these cultures having this like specific, we've kind of pushed, we hide from death in our society, like right?
yeah,
Like it's gotten to the point where like we try to spend as little time with it as possible, which I completely understand, but it's like we don't see any of that process. This this was they made it a huge part of their everyday life. I mean, it's guaranteed. It's crazy that it's not more of a part of our everyday life. But
for sure.
I mean, I get it too, right? You want to push it away, but when you push it away so much, it does become this thing that's like way scarier than it needs to be.
Well, our society is avoidant of anything
Mm,
uncomfortable. So
yes.
we don't really embrace uncomfortable things. We
No,
like
we
to
Santa,
pretend.
no Krampus,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know? It's
Let's
all good.
protect our children. Let's protect ourselves from these uncomfortable
Oh, yeah,
things.
so that's so funny that you mentioned the protecting children because I heard a great quote the other day in terms of like protecting children. And so like this is definitely not mine. I just don't know who to give credit for it. It said, "We're supposed to be preparing our children for the road, not the road for our children." Which I
Right.
thought was like, holy crap. Because and that's
Right.
why you see, so much difficulty, people like failure to launch because it's like they want to know why it came up because they were talking about I don't even know where I saw this, but they were talking about playgrounds and how in the 80s, Dave, you remember those you went to the playground in the summer. First of all, it was all steel and it was 1,000 degrees,
Yeah.
right? You touch that stuff, you're on fire. There was like those things that you run and spin around that were just pure steel. I mean, you get caught underneath that, you go flying off that. The monkey bars were way up high. I mean, everything was like metal and dangerous. And,
Rusty metal links on the swings
sure.
that could like
It was
hurt your
dangerous
hands.
and we learned how to deal with dangerous things.
Yeah.
And now it's like all padded and plastic and you'd have a hard time getting hurt on it. My kids
Yeah.
could probably manage. But like done our children a disservice by doing that, I think. Right? By protecting them
Absolutely.
so much. We've prepared the road instead of preparing our kids for the road, you know.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But anyways,
So on to the next Book of the Dead, and this one's going to have some similarities, but a lot of differences, I think, of maybe its intent
mm,
and also who might find it useful versus who might not even have access to it. So the Egyptian Book of the Dead is the one that I'm going to discuss. This is a funerary text. Generally, it's written on papyrus. Is that how you say that word?
sure is.
Okay, papyrus. And it was used from the beginning of the New Kingdom around 1550 BC to around 50 BC. It describes ancient Egyptian ritual spells, which are basically instructions and incantations. And the Egyptian name for the text, which I cannot say, translates basically to spells of coming forth by day.
Mm.
Um, so I have a ton of notes. I'm going to kind of just pick and choose what I actually want to cover here, because some of this will be helpful, some of it won't. Uh, the spells in the books of the dead, which is not it's so basically it's not a book. It's these things that are written on papyrus, and they could be, maybe put on the person that's deceased, or put in their whatever
Oh,
they're being buried in. So essentially it's not an actual book. It's just like that's the term that we tend to use in modern day for this. So they essentially are to help the deceased find their way to the afterlife and become united with the sun god, whose name is Re, and the netherworld god Osiris, in a continual cycle of renewal and rebirth. There's nearly 200 known spells, and yeah, as I mentioned, they're not really collected into books. It's mostly inscribed on objects from mummy wrappings to coffins to figurines to papyrus scrolls, not skulls, and they're all meant to accompany the dead in the tomb. So that's kind of a fascinating thing to think about. Like the intention of this is actually to send it with the dead.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So I've heard the sun god that way. I've also heard it as Ra. I mean, depending on
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We're not Egyptian, but also kind of like MapQuest for once you're dead, right?
Right.
Is that
Yeah,
sort of what it is?
or think about it like this too. It's also like, let's say you're playing a video game and you had these cheat codes.
Yep.
You're basically writing down cheat codes to arm yourself or equip yourself with strategies that will be beneficial in the afterlife. So these are provided instructions for various challenges that the deceased are going to face on their journey. And for example, spell 125 in
Oh
the
boy.
Book of the Dead lists a number of misdeeds they must deny having committed in life when they appear before Osiris. So that's
So wait, you're
interesting.
supposed to lie?
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing about this is an interesting book because it is, in some ways, this book is about deceit to get to where
Oh
you
my
need to
God.
go.
Do you think like deception was like a big part of the culture? I would be interested.
Well, all right. So
Okay.
these books are expensive. And basically, the only people who are actually going to have access to these would be wealthy, high status people. So depending on how rich you were, you could either go along and like buy a ready-made papyrus that had these on there with blank spaces for your name to be written in, or you could spend a little bit more and probably choose which spells you wanted. Um, which is and that's fascinating. They'd usually have like colored illustrations and they'd be written on in like hieroglyphic script at times, things like that. So
Yeah, it makes me it's hard for me to not even mention here that so people might be thinking, "Oh, that's kind of like dark." So like the people with access to this stuff can hold it over other people's heads and be like, "Hey, look, you cannot survive the afterlife without, having access to this information." But what's interesting is what was that? There's a word for it, and everyone's gonna be screaming at this thing. But like the Pope would offer like a type of pardon, and you can pay a certain amount of money to have your sins forgiven.
okay.
So like
Yeah.
that's not it's not that
Something along those lines. Yeah,
yeah that makes
essentially. And I would have to imagine that the way that this is being explained to me, I almost imagine that like it's almost a thing of status to be able to have access to this,
hmm
right? And like if you don't have access, like what are you doing? Who are you, peasant?
yeah.
So yeah, so some of these spells, like all the spells in this, they're gonna have various like reasons and behind them. Like there's some spells that make sure you can control your body after death. Um, the ancient Egyptians, they believed that a person was made up of different elements from the body, spirit, name, the heart. They're all the embodiments of a person. And they were afraid that these elements would disperse when you die. So these spells about spells about protecting yourself because the ancient Egyptians expected to be attacked on the journey to the afterlife by maybe gods, demons, animals, whatever. And in the next world, there are a lot of gods who are guarding gateways that you have to get through. And if you don't have the right answers to their questions at the gates, they will attack you because, they have weapons or knives or snakes in their hands and things
Get
like
snakes
that.
in their hands. Wow.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. And you know what's funny? Like just by you saying, and you started this off with like spell 125, like an example, right?
Right.
It's like geez, how long throughout human history have we exploited people's fears?
Right.
It's like, all right, fine, you're gonna be able to move your body, but if you don't have the answer to this guy's gonna throw snakes and knives at you. So it's like you could keep this, this could sustain income for religion based on people's greatest fears and the unanswerable questions.
Sure.
Providing answers for the unanswerable questions, right? And that's like unlimited. Like even like when we talked about like seven deadly sins, great episode, but like it really was like, hey, don't do these certain things because if you do these certain things, it's harder for us to control you,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
sense. right?
Yeah. So the idea was like, as you get to these checkpoints and you meet these different guards or gods or whoever, there's this idea that if you don't answer something correctly, if you don't have certain knowledge, or if you lived a certain way, you could be punished. And, that punishment could be decapitation,
Mm,
being on the slaughter block, so many different varieties of punishment. And the worst thing that could happen was that what they called a second death, which meant you were killed and your spirit couldn't come back. So you would have no afterlife at all. And that's basically what they feared probably the most. Um, so the spells in the Book of the Dead, depict their beliefs about nature, of death and afterlife, and the Book of the Dead is a vital source of information about the Egyptians' beliefs in this area. So one of the big things is all about preservation. So the rituals served a way to reintegrate these different aspects of the being. Mummification actually served to preserve and transform the physical body into Sa, I'm sorry, in idealized form with divine aspects. And the Book of the Dead contains spells aimed at preserving the body of the deceased, which may have been recited during the process of mummification. So that mummification piece was very intentional for the
mm.
reason of preservation. Like that's obvious, but like for the reasons of their afterlife and things like
Yeah.
that. The heart which was regarded as an aspect of being, which included intelligence and memory, was also protected in the spells. And in case anything happened to the physical heart, it was common to bury a jeweled heart scarab with the body to provide a replacement. So you go
Hmm.
just have a jewel scarab heart if anything happened to your actual heart.
Scarab a bug?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
I think so.
I think I learned that in Aladdin. I
I
think
think I learned
there's
that
something
in
about a
the movie The
scarab,
Mummy.
or maybe I thought there was something with a. I might be wrong actually on that. Maybe it was the mummy.
From Aladdin, I learned a vest with no shirt is not
It's
a
a
bad
sick
look.
look with some hammer pants, dude. You're
Yeah,
looking
it was some hammer pants for sure.
sick. Um, so as mentioned, the name is also an important thing, and so the name of a dead person, which constituted like individuality,
Hmm.
and things like that, was required for their continued existence, and it was written in many places throughout the book. And spell number 25 ensured that
Hmm.
the deceased would remember their own name.
They probably used to be like five spells, and they're like,
We got to keep
then
going
this
here.
isn't bringing it in.
We got to bank some more money. Let's get some
Oh
more.
yeah, you want to remember your name, don't you? Yeah, I guess I gotta remember my name.
So, in the Book of the dead are taken into the presence of the god Osiris, which I mentioned before, who is confined to the subterranean Duat. Um, as well as joining the gods, the Book of the Dead also depicts the dead living on fields of reeds.
Hmm.
Paris, I don't know how I'm going to say this word. So it's like basically it's like a paradise
Yeah,
version of the real world. Um, it depicts like lush and plentiful version of Egyptian way of living.
yeah.
There's fields, crops, but along with all those things, there's also this idea that manual labor is involved to keep up with all these things. But don't worry, there's a spell for that. So
Oh
there's a
yeah,
spell that can protect
you
you
don't want to
from
work.
having to do your own manual labor. And it almost gives you a status that's on the same page as some of the gods that you might encounter.
Wow,
So
that's actually super interesting. And it's like this idea of heaven. Isn't that kind of cool that like we all even I mentioned it like a bunch of episodes ago, but like this book Mythos, like all the Greek myths, if you kind of like read those, they mimic a lot of all these religions have way more in common than they don't. This is we're talking about
yeah,
heaven in a sense, right?
right, pretty much. Yep.
And Osiris is the god of the underworld. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So, all right, I think I've explained that part enough. Let me move on to judgment. So, this is the thing that's basically how you're going to get to this glorious afterlife.
Okay.
So, the deceased's first task was to correctly address each of the 42 assessors, um, of, here's a tough word, Maat,
Okay.
Matt,
Just call Matt.
Matt
Hi,
by
Matt.
name. So they have to address each of the 42 assessors of Matt by
That
name.
the first guy forgot his name and he's like, Matt.
Matt. while reciting the sins they did not commit during their lifetime. Did not commit.
Uh-huh.
The process allowed the dead to demonstrate that they knew each of the judge's names, um, and that they lived a life that was basically pure and, you know, sin free. If
Hmm.
all the obstacles of the duat could be negotiated, the deceased would be judged in the weighing of the heart ritual, which was depicted in spell 125. The deceased was led by the god Anubis into the
Anubis, yeah.
presence of Osiris. There, the dead person swore that they had not committed any sin from a list of 42 sins. They recited a text known as the negative confession. And the dead person's heart was weighed on a pair of scales, um, which embodied truth and justice.
So like your heart carried your sins, and if
Yeah.
it was too heavy, you were in trouble.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's so deep.
It's interesting because there's some, like, there's spells that basically can protect you
Hmm.
in this, though. So like, obviously, even if you, let's say, you sinned, the spell can protect you. It can like erase your sin. But if you don't have that spell, you also have to like do this knowledge thing of like memorization and knowing certain gods names and things like that. So there's this interesting like weird thing about the knowledge of all this stuff being almost just as important as living a sin-free life.
So there's this class thing built in it too, because it's like, all right, if you're rich, it doesn't really matter the horrible things that you do because you can always pay and figure
Right.
out ways to lighten your heart. But if you don't have any money, you don't have any access to this stuff, you better live in a way that keeps your heart light, or else you're really gonna have to pay for it in the end. And that's a good way to control people too
Yeah.
and keep
And that
them.
was literally one of the notes that I had written down was basically if you are wealthy, you can pretty much pay your way into the afterlife.
Hmm.
If you are not, you have to live a life of, free of sin. You have to live a moral existence. And I think that that is interesting how wealth, I mean, in their beliefs, it does sound like they believe that wealth can buy you
I,
happiness.
I think that word is coming to mind. I think it was indulgences. But I could be wrong, but I think like I know that in, Catholicism and when it was corrupt, like you could pay bishops, popes, whoever to commit sins. Like you could get like you could do whatever you want and pay a certain amount of money and it's fine. You're absolved. Um, yeah, dude, the more things change, the more they stay the same, huh?
Yeah. So the negative confession thing that I had mentioned, so it sounds similar to, like the Ten Commandments or something like that. But look, the Ten Commandments may be looked more as a set of rules, where this is more of like an enforcement of everyday morality. So it's kind of like a way of life, I guess, versus these rules of things that you must obey or not, commit these sins. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because if you have money and access to the Book of the Dead, you don't really have to follow the negative confession whatsoever because you will just pay your way into the
Hmm.
afterlife. Um, so yeah, I think that the whole point of this is this book essentially kind of allows people to feel a sense of control and expectation of what isn't, to come in the afterlife. It's almost like they wrote out what you're to expect. So even if you don't have access to purchase these spells, you still have knowledge of what's to come and you basically know what you need to do in order to get to the afterlife. Um, I think death can be really scary, as we all know, and we've talked about throughout this whole episode. So being prepared is important. And that's probably what these individuals were looking for as they created this. And, they really lean into this idea of judgment. So if you're not wealthy, you better have good morals and you better live by those morals, right?
Yeah, and I think that we find, I think that maybe societies, cultures found pretty early that it's beneficial to a people to behave in a way that is good, right? And people would say like, well, there's no such thing as like like good? How is good good? How is that something that we can really kind of um that's like through all cultures? Well, what's interesting is because on Netflix there's this show that I watched well, it's a movie that I watched. It was in Nuremberg. It was a pretty fairly new movie, right? But it's so the Nuremberg trials were putting the Nazis on trial, and they weren't putting them on trial for anything. Like, because so it's not like so it's a bunch of different countries putting these people on trial, and what were they putting on trial for? Crimes against humanity. And who decides that, right? So it's like this in this culture, it's like there is things that are intrinsically good and things that are intrinsically wrong. And the fact that those trials existed suggested to me that's like, all right, there's things that people can do that are just not good. And there's ways to behave that just are good. And we sometimes people don't agree with that. Sometimes people don't believe that. But I don't think there's any argument with that. I think there's ways to behave that's for the betterment of society and for others, and there's ways that are detrimental. Like some things take away and some things add to, and this is just that's just reality, I think.
Yeah.
I think people are fooling themselves if they think that like goodness is sort of relative. I don't really think that that's true.
And I'm thinking more and more about this idea of like wealth and the influence, but maybe that's not. Maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe the point more is kind of like what the Ten Commandments do for society. It's like it does instill some fear, right? And we talked about fear as like a way of control, but also it's like setting in that fear for like a positive way so that people will live a moral life, right? And like you're saying, like, it is a choice to be good. It is a choice to live a moral life. And if there has to be a reason to do so, I think for some people in order to make the choice to do that. Not everybody. I feel pretty certain in myself that I'm going to make positive choices majority of the time, just because I just that's just who I am. I
Mm.
also know a number of people who aren't going to do that,
Mhm.
and that is just the nature of humanity, I guess. And some
Yeah.
people really need this like fear, I guess, that if I don't make the right choices, that if I make choices that are going to hurt others or that aren't morally correct, something will happen. Otherwise,
So
what's the
people
point?
recognizing that, Dave. I think people were like the thinkers early were realizing like, yeah, there some people are going to do what's going to be beneficial, and some people just are going to do what's good for them.
Yeah,
And what's a way that we can kind of like come up with to make that different? You know what I
right.
mean? You could almost see there is a necessity, or maybe, if and for those who would like kind of rather believe that there is like the afterlife or some kind of like spiritual, you know, force, which I'd rather believe that personally, right? I want to believe that, and I do. I think I do believe that that we are sort of living. I don't know. I don't know that maybe being good is good for you in the afterlife. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. That's such a hard thing to really wrap your head around, and I'm just not there yet with like understanding it fully. But I think, I'll roll the dice and try to be good, you know,
Yeah, I
because
think
it's better.
100%. It feels good, and um, yeah, it's part of our value system. So, all
Yeah.
right, so I guess the final. I don't know if this would be the final question, but like, are
Yeah.
these books helpful? Um, Maybe at a time they were. Are they
Well,
helpful
certainly.
today? No,
Are they
not
helpful today?
necessarily.
I mean,
I think the things you can glean from them, the thoughts about afterlife, the thoughts about doing what's right, uh, the thoughts of living for the life that's and things are for the things that are temporary and just as much as the things that you want to be permanent. I think there's helpful thoughts in these overall,
I
though.
think so too.
Yeah,
I think everything. I think it's interesting to understand someone's culture and these kind of knowing how people thought of death gives you a lot of insight about how they lived. I think that's very interesting. And I think again, all this stuff reminds us to, you know, not forget to live and the things that are
yeah.
important.
Oh, I had one comment I forgot to make when I was describing the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I feel like the Necronomicon and H.P. Lovecraft. I feel like he might have been inspired by the book of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The idea of like the monsters, and all the stuff. There's things in that book that almost sound like H.P. Lovecraft wrote the
I
Egyptian
know.
Book of the
It
Dead.
is, but dude, something about I remember being in sixth grade and just seeing that Tutankhamun right on the cover of that book, that history or world history book, and being like, whoa, this stuff is cool. Like the something about the ancient Egyptians really, they really had something going on there. It was just really
They
cool.
certainly did.
Like yeah, like their sort of mythology, very cool. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
along with the Greeks, but like there's just to me there was always something about the ancient Egyptians that was like really, really something.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, if you have not joined our Patreon, I don't know why you're waiting. We'd love
Oh
to
yeah,
have you over there. Get on it.
get on it.
And if you haven't written a review, we would love to hear people's thoughts on the show, but also it's super helpful in making our show more accessible to wider audiences. So please write a review, leave a rating on any of those platforms that you're able to. Apple is definitely one where you can write a review. Spotify, you can interact, but you can also rate, which is very helpful. So if you could do that, amazing. And we will see you next week. Happy St. Patrick's Day, happy St. Joseph's Day, and all the other good stuff. We'll see you later.
Mhm.